Thanks, Patrick. So yeah, I'm Jacob, and I'm one of the engineers on the DevTools team. And so we build the Edge DevTools, the F12 tools if you use them in Edge, as well as other related tools like WebDriver. And I wanted to kind of walk you through what we're working on now and into the future. Let's see. Nope. We should probably have one of those down there. All right. Here's where you can find me on Twitter. All right. So if you've been to the Edge Summit before, you've heard me get up here and talk about the origin story of Edge and how we removed, a million lines or so of code, rewrote lots of things. It was a brand new browser from, et cetera, et cetera. And we haven't told that story for the DevTools in Edge. So I'm going to take a look at that. Microsoft's been building tools for the web for over 2 decades. Front page, Expression Web, Blend, the F12 tools, VS Code, tons and tons of tools out of Microsoft for the web. Browser tools have existed from Microsoft for about 12 years. This is the very first version of DevTools for Internet Explorer. It was an extension. Didn't even come with the browser. And it added on. And of course, you could get everything you needed done as a web developer with just 3 simple tools: HTML, CSS, and script. That's all you needed. No network, no performance, no memory, no fancy animation tools, nothing. Just those 3. That was all you needed. Also, you didn't need a console, I guess, right? That's not, you don't need that. And your watch pane in the debugger included a concept that we all know exists in JavaScript, like types, like strictly typed things, like disp HTML element. It was weird. It was really weird time. They've come a long way since this. So how did they come to Edge? We rewrote a lot of stuff in Edge. We have every major subsystem has had a major re-architecture over the years, and we're only 2 years in. And the DevTools were not one of those. The DevTools were more or less kind of copy and pasted and duct taped and paper clipped on to Edge from Internet Explorer. And frankly, it kind of shows, and you tell us that. So, okay, it wasn't paper clips, but we started to diagram what it looks like. It's the first step to kind of admitting we have a problem. It's quite crazy. It's really complicated how DevTools work. So we're in the process of completely changing that and rebuilding our tools so that they help you build awesome sites that just work for everyone. And that starts with talking to users. So earlier this year, we started prompting a small set of users that while you're using the DevTools to give us feedback. And we'll ask you, how satisfied are you with this tool or that tool? And you can rate it, and you can provide verbatim comments. And so when we started to build a plan for what we needed to go do in the DevTools, we took a look at what you said. Hey, I build websites all the time, and I use the DevTools, and I have this similar feedback that everybody else does. And so we really feel this ourselves. All the content that you are browsing, the Summit website, dev.microsoftedge.com, that's all built by our team. We live and breathe this stuff every day, and so we need these tools just as much as you do. So it starts with rebuilding the foundation and getting a solid platform for the tools so that we can build the next generation of tools for you. What does that look like? So the front end of the DevTools, it's all web code. It's all modern web code. It's TypeScript, Webpack, Glamour. And we're in the process of building a new API, a public API. It would be a JSON protocol. If you're familiar with the Chrome DevTools protocol, it'll be highly interoperable so that we can have multiple tools, not just the F12 tools, but VS Code, Sonar, which you heard earlier from Anton, really cool project, Visual Studio itself, or your project, working against Edge as a tool. So we're really excited to start that journey, and it's going to take a few releases. But this is where we're moving into a modern world for our DevTools. And as we've started, this Fall Creators Update is really our first wave here for the DevTools. As we've started, we've already seen massive improvements from this work. We're using half the memory that the DevTools used to use in the previous release. We've been deleting a lot of code. That's the story of IE to Edge all over the board, is deleting lots of code. 4% less disk space just because we deleted code, which is crazy. And they're also starting to launch faster. So hopefully you're starting to notice some nice foundational improvements, and we're going to keep going across all of these metrics into the future. So, okay, slow, reliable, these are all very important things. If we don't have those, then we don't have anything. But we're also missing features, right? So when you open up a toolbox, what do you expect to find? You need a hammer. You need pliers, you need a Phillips head screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver. I don't care if you've got the fancy Craftsman laser level blah, blah, blah thing if you don't have a hammer and nails to use to, hang something on a wall. So what are we building? All right, let's take a look. So these are all new things in the DevTools since the last Edge Summit. You've heard us talk a lot about accessibility, and there's more coming after me with Bogdan and Rawson. But we can score 100% on the HTML5 accessibility benchmark, and that doesn't complete the job. You are also on the hook, right? It also requires web developers to build content that just works for everybody else. And so we want to empower you to be able to do that through DevTools. So we've been adding a set of tools to the Elements tab in the DevTools, which allow you to actually get insights into how your page is represented to assistive technologies. So how many are familiar with the accessibility tree? Yeah, okay, that's good. That's actually more than what I thought. So you have your markup. There's a hierarchical structure. You have attributes like ARIA that you can use to make your content accessible. You work on tab rings, focusability, et cetera. All of that gets interpreted by the browser engine into an accessibility tree that previously you didn't, as a developer, really have access to. And that tree is what screen readers and other assistive technologies use to actually interpret your page to users of their tools. So this is that tree. We're now showing that to you. And so now you can actually understand when your markup or your ARIA attributes aren't actually translating into the right presentation for assistive technologies. You can go and debug it. Since this is a concept that's new for a lot of people, we've also baked in some helpful tooltips. So like in this example, you're hovering over one of the properties on this element in the page that's called the level property. I don't know what the level property is. Well, it tells me the level property describes the location of an element inside of a hierarchical or broken hierarchical structure. For example, a bulleted or numbered list, headings, other structured data items that can have various parent-child relationships, and the level describes where in the structure the item is located. So now you get to actually get pretty detailed understanding of what this means and how it affects your users. And so this is just one of the ways that we're exploring helping you build more accessible content. In the debugger, we're making improvements across the board. So we've had experimental support for a little while to be able to edit in place, right? You want to just go to your JavaScript, change your script, and click the button and just see what happens without having to go back to your IDE and change it and save it and commit it and deploy it. That's now on by default in the tools. So you can edit on idle, and we even include a built-in diff so you can see what you've changed. A popular feature request from framework authors is sometimes your framework or your script gets loaded a lot, right? Maybe there's a bunch of iframes and it's actually in all of them. And you're developing the framework, you're developing the script. You set a breakpoint in one of those. What if it gets hit in another document, right? So previously, each script was its own instance in the DevTools, and so you had to have breakpoints across all of them. We've now coalesced those into one breakpoint per script, per URL, basically. The Resource Explorer is now dockable. That was high piece of feedback from users. And we've started to add storage inspection. So local storage, session storage, cookies, they're all there. You can edit them. And we're working on IndexedDB, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Service worker, service worker, service worker. We are we really are looking forward to being one of the first browsers to bring PWAs to the desktop and Windows. And we can't do that without good tooling support. So you'll start to see in the Fall Creators Update, when you enable service workers, the service worker flag, you can actually find tools in the DevTools for inspecting what service workers are running, updating them, restarting them, unregistering them, as well as cache inspection. So you can go see what's in the cache API, inspect that, and use that to develop your PWA. This is still experimental, and we're going to continue working on this into the future. DOM mutation breakpoints, high utility feature. If you have script that's constructing your page or manipulating your page, you don't know where it is, something's changing this stupid class and I don't know who, how do I find it? So you can just right-click on a node in the DOM tree. You can select mutation breakpoints. There's various different types: subtree modified, nodes inserted, attributes modified. Creates a breakpoint. You'll see the list of breakpoints here in the Elements tab. And then as soon as you trigger that manipulation through script, or maybe you have to click something in the page to cause it to happen, we flip right over into the debugger onto that line right as the mutation's happening, and you can step through and understand what's going on. One of the cool things about features like this, you may be familiar with this in other browser tools. By coming and building these now, we can actually look at places where we can make small quality of life improvements. I'll just talk about one here. The common pattern that what you want to do, right, is create one of these breakpoints on a node because something is not working. Okay, you're gonna get a hunch on why it's not working. You're gonna go back to your code. You're gonna change it. You're gonna want to refresh the page, right? Now, browser tools try their best to persist those breakpoints across a refresh, but really, when you refresh the page, it's a new page, right? It could have new ads that got swapped in. The DOM tree could be in a different order. Maybe there's stuff that gets dynamically created that hasn't been dynamically created, and so the node that you had breakpoints on doesn't even exist yet, right? So this is a really tough problem for the browser tools. You refresh and you don't know what's going on. So we added what just seemed like an obvious feature to us, which was a button that just lets you manually rebind all the breakpoints. So when you know that the element that you're interested in is back on the page, rebind, and now we're tracking it again. You don't have to go searching through it, find element by click or anything, and reset up your breakpoints every time. You just simply rebind. A big literal missing gap, like you actually couldn't see this in our tools before, is before-after pseudo elements. These are now all here. Either before they weren't displayed or they'd be crossed out, so you can just go look straight in the styles pane. You can see all your pseudo elements right there and inspect them. We've had event listener inspection for quite a while, but a lot of times you don't know exactly where the event listener is. Events bubble, so you may be highlighting the button that you think the event listener is on, but it's actually somewhere in the ancestor tree. So we now have the ancestors checkbox. You can click that, and you can see all the events from that node all the way up to the window. This is another place where we've made a small kind of quality of life improvement over what the kind of state of the art is. So normally, if you're familiar with the ancestors button in other browsers, this just dumps the list of all the events, right? And you can expand it and you can see what node it's on. But if you're trying to debug something like, say, how a pointer event bubbles up through the tree, you kind of want to see how it bubbles up through the tree, right? Instead of just a list of the events. So we now have this group by drop down. You can group, instead of by event, you can group by element. And when you group by element, you then get to see how the event will actually bubble up through the tree. And that's a nice little tweak that we added. Also over in the styles pane, we're doing all kinds of stuff with @rules. You can now inspect your keyframe animations, edit them, and work on your animations for your page. We have font inspection. Will show you if you have a font face rule, not just what you specified, but what we actually loaded. If you specified Helvetica and it's not on the machine, we'll show you that and what we substituted and said, how many characters you're using, how it came over the wire, etc. Your media queries. If you're following Melanie's advice on how to correctly feature detect grid, we'll show your @supports rule right here in the tools. and it's all nicely laid out into sections so that you can find the rules you're looking for. Active, focus, and hover, forcing the pseudo-state so you can inspect all those things. Those are all here too. These, again, hammers, screwdrivers, and pliers that you need. So I mentioned we're really rewriting things, right? Like, so we're going to go tool by tool and overhaul things end to end. And the first place where we started doing that is the console. The console in the Fall Creators Update is entirely new. We ripped out the old one and it's brand new. It's built on top of Inferno and TypeScript, Webpack. It supports all the latest console APIs, including console.table, as well as pretty printing, formatting your console logs with CSS. We coalesce spammy messages. When you get a lot of the same message over and over, you just get one. You can filter, you can search. We do inline syntax highlighting as you type, as well as IntelliSense. The IntelliSense is actually smart, so if you use VS Code, it's actually not just knowledgeable of the type system of the browser, it actually knows the variables that exist in the current workspace. So you can actually go, if you type in this example here, you'll see there's an object that's created called dog, and you hit dog.a, and it actually knows that there's a property called age. So it's a smart IntelliSense autocomplete at the console. There. So that's a look of some of the stuff that we've just gotten done over the last few months, and let's look forward into what we're going to do next. And again, I go back to it's user feedback. We're asking you. Every single feature here is stuff that has been asked for from you guys. So one of the features we've actually added in the Fall Creators Update is a button directly in the tools to give us that feedback. You click this button, it launches the feedback hub, which you see here on the right, and you can file feedback directly to the engineers. Whether it's a bug report or a feature suggestion, you can do it straight here from the tools. If you have some weird bug that you think we'll never ever be able to reproduce, you can take a trace for us and reproduce the issue. We'll be able to see it on our end and fix it for you. So we're paying attention to every piece of feedback that comes. So definitely help us help you. The other place you can do that is user voice. Uservoice.microsoftedge.com. There's a section for the F12 developer tools. And you can go in there and file tooling ideas and go, get your hashtag going viral to upvote it, whatever. And we look at that, and that's how we prioritize things along the way. Every single feature that I showed here today is upvoted on user voice, whether it's the pseudo elements, console.table, forcing pseudo states, mutation breakpoints, or even just redoing the whole console. That's all comes straight from user voice. So if you have great ideas for the tools, this is where to go. So what's on user voice that we're looking at next? A big request is to be able to debug other devices. You have a HoloLens or an Xbox, a phone, or just somebody else's machine, right? Like somebody else has something that reproduces on their machine. So we want to enable that support directly from the DevTools over the network or over USB. And this goes back to one of the earlier slides I had about building a new API, a edge protocol for debugging. So we're working on that, and you'll start to see that light up over the coming releases. Docking the tools vertically. You have these nice 16 by 9 or even wider monitors, and we force you to put the tools at the bottom. That's kind of dumb. So we'll make use of that space better and allow you to dock to the right. I mentioned we're working on IndexedDB inspection. It's a huge one for PWAs as well. A lot of heavy usage we're finding in PWAs. So get in there, see your indices. Performance. We've already made some headway in this first release, but we're going to really go big on performance over the next few releases. This is both the performance of the tools themselves. When I run a tool, it should just be responsive, switching tabs, expanding the tree, et cetera, taking memory snapshots, whatever it is. But it also is, when you use the tools, they need to be as light a weight as possible against the page, right? Like you're trying to debug what's going on with your page, and if the tools have this like observer effect, that's not a good thing. So we're focused on both of those areas of performance for the tools. So this is our journey starting now, and it really is kind of three main things. We're going to double down on the fundamentals. We're redoing a lot of the infrastructure on the tools so that they're reliable, they're fast, they're stable, and we're going to build into the tool ecosystem. So it's not just about the tools that we ship, but also tools that are out there and open source, Sonar, Lighthouse, whatever it is that you want to use against Edge. We're going to make that possible for those tools. And of course, new tools. We're going to keep building these types of things that you're asking for that are just fundamental to getting your job done. And we're going to just nail one after another of those. So these are kind of the three ways that we're thinking about building brand new DevTools for you. And we look forward to being back here in a year and looking back at a whole laundry list of cool things that you guys suggested to us and we built. So dive in, try them out if you haven't used them in a while, give us feedback, vote up ideas on user voice, and we're excited to build better tools for you so that you can make the web work for everybody. Thanks.